Tonight, the former vice president of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association says the recent quarantine case has exposed the flaws in the health department's so-called protocols. Health officials say it served as a simulation exercise. The current president of the Medical and Dental Association says discussions need to be had about holding the Russian national accountable for reckless endangerment. And police investigate the killing of a Babunau man. That and more coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Thursday, the 13th of February, 2020. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. We're on Floor Channel 117. The broadcast is also being simulcast on Kiss FM Radio. You can watch via our website. It's www.caribbeanhottv.com or on our free Caribbean Hot FM mobile app. I'm lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. St. Lucia has no confirmed cases of coronavirus. Recent testing of a non-national who presented symptoms and had traveled to China confirmed that he was negative for novel coronavirus. The Department of Health and Wellness has indicated that the process of his quarantine served as a simulation exercise to test the island's level of preparedness. The nation has breathed a collective sigh of relief following an announcement by Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sharon Belmar-George that a Russian national presenting respiratory symptoms who had travel history to China tested negative for novel coronavirus. The Russian man traveled to St. Lucia from Martinique via private yacht. Despite a travel ban, he was allowed to enter our borders because he was 1 day outside the window of the travel ban, which indicates 14 days of having been in China. The man is currently at the Victoria Hospital and in good health.
On February 11, 2020, the Department of Health and Wellness reported that a non-national who arrived in St. Lucia via private yacht from a neighboring country was placed on medical quarantine at a health facility as he had visited a healthcare institution with respiratory symptoms and had recent travel history to mainland China. A sample was taken from the patient and was sent to the Caribbean Public Health Agency, which is our reference lab for testing. On February 12, 2020, the Department of Health and Wellness received the test results of the non-national quarantine, and the patient has tested negative for the novel coronavirus.
The Department of Health says this experience has served as a simulation exercise to test its level of preparedness.
The Department of Health and Wellness reassures the public of its commitment to strengthen its preparedness plan and ensure that all of the necessary protocols and guidelines are followed to reduce the possible impact of coronavirus on our population. The Department of Health will continue to work closely with its stakeholders and regional agencies to manage the threat of the coronavirus.
The public is asked to continue practicing the standard recommendations to prevent the spread of infection. These include regular hand washing with soap and water or alcohol-based hand sanitizer where soap and water is not available, covering the mouth and nose with disposable tissues or clothing when coughing and sneezing, avoiding close contact with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness such as coughing and sneezing, and to seek medical attention and share your travel history with your healthcare provider if you have symptoms suggestive of respiratory illness either during or after travel. President of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, Dr. Merle Clark, is questioning the circumstances surrounding the island's near miss of a possible new coronavirus outbreak. She says the fact that the Russian male at the center of the case was able to make his way into the country and interact with members of the public is a major cause for concern, and that there should also be discussions about holding him accountable for reckless endangerment. Rochelle Gonzalez tells us more.
The arrival of a Russian national who came to the island exhibiting symptoms similar to that of the novel coronavirus, leading to him and his asymptomatic wife being quarantined, has sparked a mixture of feelings, including anger and apprehension. Questions have been raised asking why was he allowed to disembark from his private yacht and to come ashore, where he came into contact with a number of locals, including those on a public minibus which he took to go to a medical facility seeking treatment. What was most disturbing was that the pair had traveled from China weeks prior to their trip to St. Lucia. President of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, Dr. Merle Clark, said there should be accountability.
I do think to a certain extent it's reckless, and there's some very hard questions that we have to ask him and ask ourselves. He is a patient, of course, and he's a human right. He has to be taken care of because, of course, the question arose, why should we quarantine? Why wasn't he quarantined on the yacht that he came and that sort of thing? But if a patient needs care, especially care that cannot be provided, say, at home or on a yacht, then the patient does have to be admitted. I mean, human rights. At the end of the day, we are physicians. We took an oath to do no harm, so we have to do it. But I do think there's some hard questions that have to be asked, and of him in particular. Why would you do it literally, is what we say in Rochelle, because the patient, of course, is still under quarantine. Thankfully, as we said, he's tested a virus, but he does still need care. But some questions need to be asked of him, and I do think there needs to be some reckoning or some answering for what is, in a sense, reckless. What he did knowing that he had symptoms, because the symptoms did not just appear, because our understanding is that he was still in Martinique for, well, gastrointestinal symptoms, and then I'm not sure when the respiratory symptoms came about, because I said there's still some confusion in terms of contact wear and that sort of thing, but it was flagged.
Dr. Clark went on to say that he is not the only one who should be held accountable in this case.
I think, of course, there's some decisions that have to be made. So I think, like I said, there needs to be heightened vigilance at the ports of entry. So things that perhaps obtained in the past suddenly can't obtain now. We're living in a different time, in a new time, so some new decisions certainly have to be made. Because I said, is it restrictions on everybody who has been to China in the past 14 days, or is it Chinese nationals? So we do have to review some things. This was, in a sense, I guess, a dry run, and it allows you, what this allowed is for us to see where the deficiencies are. I think as it pertains to medical care, nursing care of this patient, protocols were followed, but obviously there are loopholes, and your protocols between the ports and what happens at the hospital. There are some hard decisions that have to be taken, and there are some things that need to be reviewed and changed, because at the end of the day, as I said, protection of our population is of utmost importance.
Dr. Clark said the man in question needs to take responsibility to what he potentially exposed our nation to. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
We will have more on this matter, but first, the Royal St. Lucia Police Force is investigating the first homicide for the month of February 2020, following a shooting in the north of the island on Wednesday evening. The incident occurred shortly after a businessman exited his vehicle next to his girlfriend's home. Public Relations Officer of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, Corporal Anne Joseph, gave the details of the incident.
Police are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of 55-year-old John Baptiste Honora, a resident of Lage Babuno. Officers attached to the Grizzly Police Station responded to a report of a shooting at Reedery in Grizzly about 6:20 p.m. yesterday, Wednesday, 12 February 2020. On arrival, the officers noticed the unresponsive male along a roadside in Reedery. He had sustained several gunshot injuries about the body, allegedly following an attack by an unknown individual. He was conveyed to the Victoria Hospital via ambulance, where he was pronounced dead, and a post-mortem examination is scheduled for a later date.
When asked whether there were any suspects in the matter, this was Corporal Anne Joseph's response.
We are pursuing bits of information, but for now there is nobody in custody in relation to this incident.
This is the 5th homicide in St. Lucia so far for the year 2020. With the COVID-19, otherwise known as novel coronavirus, being a global matter, as are the facts surrounding it, questions have been raised asking whether the Russian national who was recently quarantined for exhibiting respiratory symptoms should in fact be held accountable for reckless endangerment to public health. The man and his wife, who traveled to China as recently as mid-January, disembarked from a private yacht and made their way to 2 medical facilities using public transportation. Here's what you have to say on the matter.
COVID-19, otherwise known as the novel coronavirus, since its outbreak in Wuhan, China in December 2019, has now been recorded in over 25 countries of the world and has since claimed over 1,000 lives. With that said, a Russian national whose travel history showed that he was in China mid-January and exhibited symptoms similar to those of the coronavirus, made his way over to St. Lucia and, via public transport, made his way to a public health facility seeking medical treatment. Now, although test results came back negative for the virus, the question now stands, should he be taken to task for the reckless endangerment of St. Lucian lives?
I think it's within the extent of the law. If there are laws that could deal with that type of behavior, then the person should be prosecuted. But I mean, it is reckless. But what was the motive of the person? Did he think he has the virus? If he didn't think that and he just felt he needed medical attention, then but we have to weigh. It has to be weighed within the context of what is lawful within St. Lucian law and the intention of the individual.
I think he should, because he know he was in China and he know the danger this sickness carries, and by taking public transportation, I think if it was in another country like America, he would have been persecuted. St. Lucia should take action.
He should be prosecuted because many lives are at risk here. We're talking about population, Castries, and then the wider island. So yes, he should be prosecuted because that's a health threat.
Since he have such sickness, he's carrying it. He just shouldn't come here at all. It's a problem for us because we don't have this problem in our environment, and for us to be having those things suddenly, I think the government should really check all those persons before they even leave the cruise ship or the aircraft.
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because immigration should have stopped him from there and transport him and don't let him travel to take a public bus to go to the hospital.
I don't think he should be prosecuted as such, but I think he should be made to feel the consequences of his action, whether through some sort of reprobation to the people or something. But I think he should feel some sort of consequences. Maybe not prosecuted to the point of being imprisoned, but he should be able to, something should be taken place for this gentleman who knew this is reckless endangerment, basically. So I think he should feel something.
Okay, based on what you said, that he knowingly exhibited the symptoms of the flu and the virus and temperature, knowingly, I think it is his responsibility as a citizen of the world to play it safe and have the authorities to come in, right? But then, this is the way the world goes now. I've been at a bus stop and seen 5- and 6-year-old children waiting for a bus 20 minutes. And when the bus arrives, the adults who just arrived jump in the bus and lead them down. So that's the problem in the world. The selfishness of the world is the problem. I think he should have responsibility to report it to the authorities, but that's what they will go now. Selfishness, even in traffic, people not allowing people to break from the junctions. Follow me? But yes, he has a responsibility to report that.
But do you think he should be prosecuted for reckless endangerment?
Well, I think if it can be proven that he did, I think so, but then it'll be very hard to prove that he knowingly had a feeling that he was suffering from something similar to the symptoms. Because nobody knows for now if it's corona, because St. Lucia has not the capacity to test coronavirus here.
Well, it has been tested negative.
No, but at the time the news came out, we didn't have news yet for him, so he himself didn't know. But if he had the symptoms, it is his responsibility, and everybody else who is exhibiting the same symptoms should go to a health facility.
Well, you've heard what they had to say. If you want a chance to share your opinion, join us next time where you can have your say. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Still to come, the former vice president of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association says the recent quarantine case has exposed the flaws in the health department's so-called protocols. The World Health Organization says there is no change in the coronavirus outbreak despite a spike in China. And it's all about love compliments the Ministry of Commerce.